Let's move on. It is great news for Hindus and Buddhists in India. In just 2 months, they will be able to trek to Mount Kailash from the Indian territory. Up until now, pilgrims had to travel to Tibet to start their journey.
You know, I wrote a book called The Maharishi of Kailash. It's available at our book table. This is a wonderful saint who is supposedly 400 years old.
Ancient texts hidden beneath a Chinese monastery don't describe Mount Kailash as a mountain. They describe it as a machine, an artificial structure placed on Earth by beings who existed long before humanity. Those texts say the machine is still running, and something called the seed of the next world is buried deep beneath it. After 60 years of enforced silence, monks have finally broken their vow to reveal this, and every terrifying, unexplainable phenomenon on that mountain exists for a single purpose: to make sure no one ever reaches what's hidden inside. This is what they revealed.
So, in that sense, I know the texture of this life and that life and every other life here, but there are some lives which don't have the texture, which are totally different.
And how are you experiencing these lives?
You want me to say something ridiculous?
No, I don't think it's ridiculous at all.
No, if I say something which is illogical, it'll seem ridiculous.
I don't think it's illogical.
It will be illogical because it will not fit into the framework of human logic.
The things that eats time. 3 weeks ago, a 94-year-old Chinese monk named Chen Huimin did something that could get him killed. After 6 decades of silence, he agreed to describe what's written in the forbidden texts hidden beneath his monastery in Qinghai province. His hands were trembling the entire time. His translator had to stop twice because the old monk kept pausing, glancing towards the door, as if expecting someone to burst in and silence him forever. He finally said, "Time does not flow there. It pools, it accelerates. It takes from you what you cannot get back." The monks have whispered about this for centuries, but the Russians proved it in 1999. A scientific expedition led by Dr. Yuri Volkov encountered a group of Siberian climbers returning from Kailash's slopes. Volkov was a hardened researcher, 20 years in extreme altitude medicine. Nothing rattled this man. But what he saw that day made him abandon his entire expedition and flee the region. The climbers had been gone for 12 hours. 12 hours. But they came back looking like they'd aged 20 years. Hair that had been jet black was now streaked with gray. Beards had grown weeks longer than should have been physically possible. Fingernails extended past their fingertips, and their faces carried deep lines, sagging skin, the hollow, broken look of men who had witnessed something that erased part of who they were.
In 21 days, I was in Kailash, trekked. You know, my muscle mass had gone down, my legs had become like this. Always I've been walking, trekking, playing games, but my muscle mass went down so much in these 8 weeks, I just shrank like…
Volkov documented everything in a private journal that wasn't published until after his death. He wrote, "Their eyes were the worst, not frightened, empty." He ordered full medical examinations before the climbers left the region. What he found defied everything science understands about the human body. Their organs showed deterioration, consistent with men in their 80s. Cellular damage that should take decades had occurred in half a day. Blood markers indicated extreme biological stress, as if their bodies had lived through years of aging in a single afternoon. But here is the catch. Within 2 years, every single one of those climbers was dead. Heart failure, organ collapse. Conditions that simply do not happen to healthy men in their 30s.
One of the men said afterwards that it was like starting a new life. Their extraordinary feat has been submitted for inclusion into the Guinness Book of World Records.
The only thing connecting them was those 12 hours on the mountain. The monks weren't surprised. According to Master Chen, the ancient texts describe an influence zone extending 15 kilometers from the peak in all directions. Within that boundary, normal rules collapse. Time compresses, bodies age, and something watches to see how much you can endure before you break. But time distortion is only one symptom. The monks say the mountain has been actively rejecting human beings for as long as anyone can remember. And the way it does that is even stranger than accelerated aging.
Display for the people that are watching.
Wow. See, your whole perception right now for most human being is limited to 5 senses. Seeing,
Yes.
hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. This is how you know the world. If something has no smell, no taste, no touch, you won't know.
But there could be an infinite number of
Oh,
senses
yes.
that we're not aware
Yes.
of, that we don't possess.
The peak that fights back. No one has ever reached the summit of Mount Kailash. Not one person, not in all of recorded history. And that's not because people haven't tried. It's because the mountain won't let them. British mountaineer Hugh Rutledge was among the first Westerners to document this. In 1926, he spent 3 weeks studying Kailash from every possible approach. Rutledge was a veteran of the most lethal peaks in the Himalayas, a man who had watched climbers fall to their deaths and never flinched. But after 3 weeks observing Kailash, he packed his equipment and declared the Biyar mountain utterly unclimbable. His expedition notes reveal something unsettling. He didn't cite ice conditions or technical difficulty. He wrote about a feeling, a pressure that built in his chest the closer he got, an overwhelming certainty that the mountain was aware of his presence and did not want him there. 3 of his guides had nightmares so severe they woke up screaming, clawing at their own faces. Rutledge himself admitted that leaving felt less like retreat and more like being allowed to escape. The pattern repeated for decades. In 2001, a Spanish climbing team secured one of the rarest permits in mountaineering history, official authorization to attempt Kailash's summit. These were elite climbers, Everest veterans, K2 survivors, men who had conquered every technical challenge the Himalayas could throw at them. They never made it past base camp. Team members described sudden hallucinations, visions of loved ones dying, the ground opening beneath their feet, shapes moving in peripheral vision that vanished the instant they turned to look. And most disturbing of all, a shared psychological experience none of them could fully articulate. A certainty, deep and absolute, that continuing forward would end in something worse than death. Russian climber Sergei Kisikov described his experience in an interview that was later suppressed by local authorities. He was shaking as he spoke, chain smoking, refusing to make eye contact with the camera. His translator said Kisikov hadn't slept properly in months. He said, "I felt altitude sickness, but this was different. A thought repeated in my head over and over. You do not belong here. It wasn't my thought. It came from outside, from the mountain. I could feel it pushing against my mind, like a hand pressing on my skull." The moment he decided to turn back, every symptom vanished instantly. He said it felt like being released from a grip he hadn't realized was holding him. The relief hit so hard, he wept. The monks have a name for this. The ancient texts call it the field of rejection, an energy that doesn't attack intruders but convinces them to leave. It identifies the deepest weakness in each person's mind and amplifies it until retreat becomes the only possible choice. But The texts warn that the mountain's defenses go far beyond psychology. The closer anyone gets, the more reality itself begins to unravel. And the first thing to fail is always technology. If the hairs on the back of your neck are already standing up, smash that subscribe button right now, because what comes next makes the psychological warfare look like a warning shot.
Traded hotspot
Yeah.
of activity.
Yes, and that too, it's like clockwork. Exactly at 2:30 in the morning, it starts. Boom, activity like that for about 1.5 hours, 1 hour 40 minutes like that. After that it just goes down. It's almost like a busy airport. Boom, 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 things are happening. But not like crafts or anything, just bunches of lives, just up and down, things happening for about 1.5 to 2 hours max.
Where machines go to die, compasses go insane near Kailash. Needles spin endlessly, without settling, or lock in place, refusing to respond. In a landscape where landmarks repeat and weather shifts without warning, losing a compass isn't an inconvenience. It's a death sentence. One German expedition in 2015 brought 6 compasses from 3 different manufacturers. All 6 failed simultaneously within 8 kilometers of the peak. The expedition leader, a former military navigator, described watching every needle spin in perfect synchronization, as if responding to the same invisible signal. Above the mountain, it gets worse. Aircraft are officially prohibited from flying over the peak, classified as restricted airspace. But the real reason isn't in any government document. Pilots who've flown near the region describe instruments giving contradictory readings at the same time. Altimeters showing impossible numbers, heading indicators spinning backward, complete signal loss lasting exactly as long as they were closest to the peak. Turbulence appearing from nowhere in perfectly clear skies, not the gradual build-up pilots expect, but instant violent shaking that stopped as abruptly as it began. Drones tell the same story. Documentary crews have attempted to fly unmanned vehicles toward the slopes, hoping to capture footage of a summit no human eyes have ever seen. Most never made it far. Some lost signal and dropped from the sky like stones. Others returned garbled footage, images that looked corrupted, distorted, as if something had interfered with the data itself. Engineers examined the devices afterward and found 0 physical damage. No explanation. The machines simply stopped working within range of the mountain, then functioned perfectly once removed. One technician reportedly refused to analyze any more Kailash equipment after the 3rd drone. He quit his job a week later. But here is the catch. The monks say the technology failures aren't random. They're targeted. The mountain somehow identifies what humans rely on to feel in control and systematically disables it. First navigation, then communication, then the devices themselves. By the time climbers realize what's happening, they're already disoriented, isolated, and fighting the urge to run. When confronted with these accounts, Master Chen nodded slowly. The texts predicted this, he said. The anchor point generates a field that rejects what is artificial. Your machines are not welcome there. Neither are you. And what the monks revealed next suggests the mountain isn't just defending itself. It's watching, and it has eyes. The eyes that never close. 2 lakes sit at the base of Kailash, separated by a narrow strip of land. They couldn't be more different. Lake Manasarovar is perfectly still. Fresh water, mirror smooth, even when wind howls across the plateau. At extreme altitude, when every other body of water freezes solid, Manasarovar refuses. Its surface stays calm, reflective, almost artificially serene. Beside it lies Rakshastal, saline, restless, its water churning constantly. as if something beneath the surface refuses stillness. Master Chen's voice dropped when he spoke about them. He glanced at his fellow monks before continuing, as if checking whether he should reveal what came next. The texts call them the mountain's eyes, he said quietly. Manasarovar watches the sky. Rakshastal watches what lies beneath. Together, they form a surveillance system that has operated for millennia. Nothing approaches Kailash without being observed. Nothing. In 2012, Indian geologist Dr. Priya Nair camped at the shore of Manasarovar as part of a hydrological survey team. Around 2 in the morning, she woke to a faint glow moving across the water, not reflections of stars. Independent points of light tracing deliberate, geometric patterns across the surface. She grabbed her instruments. Every reading flatlined, as if the equipment had simply decided to stop registering data. Nair watched for nearly 40 minutes, hands trembling, unable to look away. By morning, the lights were gone. Her instruments worked perfectly. She submitted her report to the Geological Survey of India and requested reassignment. In a later interview, her voice still unsteady, she said only, "Water does not behave that way. Nothing I have ever studied behaves that way. I will not go back." The land around the lakes shifts in ways that defy mapping. Pilgrims walking ritual circuits speak of trails that fade between footsteps. Rocks standing solid 1 hour, gone the next. No collapse, no erosion, just a quiet refusal to remain consistent, as if reality itself becomes unreliable this close to the mountain. Photographs taken at the lakes rarely match what witnesses remember seeing. Sounds travel wrong, arriving late, distorted, or not at all. Even silence feels layered. Echoes that never fully fade. But here is the catch. The monks say the lakes don't just observe. They distort perception deliberately, testing whether visitors can be trusted with what lies beyond. Most fail without ever knowing they were being tested. If the time distortion is the mountain's weapon and the psychological pressure is its shield, the lakes are its intelligence network. And everything, every defense, every phenomenon exists to protect what the monks say is hidden at Kailash's core. The seed of the next world Master Chen saved the most disturbing revelation for last. The monastery had grown quiet. The other monks had left the room one by one, as if they knew what was coming and wanted no part of it. Wind rattled the ancient wooden shutters. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. The texts speak of a chamber, deep beneath the mountain. Not a tomb, not a vault. Something else entirely. He called it the Hall of Records. According to the ancient texts, this chamber contains knowledge predating human civilization by tens of thousands of years. Documentation of where humanity actually came from. Not evolution, not creation myths, but actual records of human origins that contradict everything modern civilization has been taught. Information about abilities and histories deliberately erased from collective memory. And most disturbing, detailed descriptions of what is coming, events the text call the turning, which will transform human existence entirely. The texts call it the seed of the next world. Master Chen said he does not fully understand what that means. But the texts make clear that this knowledge is not meant for humanity yet. The mountain's purpose, every defense, every phenomenon, every death, exists to ensure the Hall of Records remains sealed until the proper time. The obvious question hung in the air. When? How would humanity know it was ready? Master Chen's expression changed. For the first time, something that might have been fear crossed his face. His hands gripped the edge of the table. "We won't choose," he said quietly. "The mountain will choose. It always has." 4 major world religions call Kailash the center of the universe. Hindus believe Shiva sits in eternal meditation at its summit. Buddhists see it as the mandala of ultimate enlightenment. Jains hold it as the site of their first teacher's liberation. The Bon religion considers it the seat of all spiritual power. Different faiths, different centuries, different continents of origin, but all of them converge on this single point. And 4 of Asia's greatest rivers originate from the region surrounding Kailash: the Indus, the Sutlej, the Brahmaputra, the Karnali. 4 rivers flowing in 4 directions, sustaining nearly half of all humanity. The monks say none of this is coincidence. The mountain was placed at the source point deliberately, feeding life across the planet while guarding secrets that could end everything civilization thinks it knows. Mount Kailash has stood unmoved for millennia. While governments restrict access, climbers flee in terror, and scientists document phenomena they cannot explain. Now, monks who guarded these secrets for over 1,000 years have finally broken their silence. And the only question that remains is the one no one alive can answer. What happens when the mountain decides humanity is finally ready? Drop your theory in the comments. What do you think is buried beneath Kailash? If this story changed how you see the world's most forbidden mountain, smash that like button and subscribe. Every week, the channel goes deeper into knowledge that mainstream sources won't touch. And trust me, what gets uncovered next makes this look like the introduction.